Hello everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. If someone could just confirm via the chat that everything's working okay, that the sound's okay and everything else, that would be great. If the sound is a bit quiet on your end, it should be okay, but just make sure you've got the YouTube volume turned up there. So as usual, just to explain how all this works. So we do these market outlooks and sort of recap every week on a Friday at 2:30 UK time. So we have a quick look at the major events for next week and then go through some of the major markets. Stock indices, crude oil, gold, silver, some of the cryptos, some of the FX pairs, have a look at what's been happening and the major stuff to watch for next week, where there might be opportunities. And then I'll jump into the questions. So if there's any markets you'd like looking at that we don't normally look at, put them into the chat. And once we've looked at the usual markets, I'll go through them. Please don't spam the chat with the same market every time. I will get back to it. So just put it in the chat while we're going through the stuff. Let's just do a risk warning. This presentation is for educational purposes only. It does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation, or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones and Capital.com accept no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. Spread bets and CFDs are complex instruments and come with a high risk of losing money rapidly due to leverage. 76.25% of retail investor accounts lose money when spread betting and or trading CFDs with this provider. You should consider whether you understand how spread bets and CFDs work and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. Right, that's that. Important events for next week. There's a lot happening next week. Clearly, inflation is a hot topic at the moment. On Tuesday, we've got US inflation data in the afternoon, so that will be interesting, I think. Then in the morning, Tuesday morning, UK unemployment. I think unemployment clearly much watched at the moment, particularly as things like furlough start to come to an end. Wednesday the 15th, UK inflation in the morning. So that could be interesting. And Canadian inflation in the afternoon. So there's a lot of inflation data next week. And then on Thursday, Australian unemployment numbers in whenever they came out. Early hours of the morning, UK time, I'm guessing. So that's it. So a big week for inflation. I think we could well see some volatility across FX and across stock markets next week, depending on what the market makes of this inflation data. So let's see what happens. Just some contact details before we get into the stuff. Of course, I'm doing this with Capital.com. So the trading platform is Capital. To open an account, open a demo account, open a real account, go to the website, Capital.com. You can download our app. To find out more about me and the trading course I run, go to davidjonestrading.com. Any questions after today, drop me an email, david.jones@capital.com, and follow me on Twitter @JonesTheMarkets, and follow Capital.com on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. That's it. You're watching on our YouTube channel now. If you haven't been to our YouTube channel before, if you click on subscribe, we push out market commentary throughout the week on various markets, and also in the description for today's live stream is the link to our stocks channel. So we recently launched a channel on US stocks. There's a video going out later today on Robinhood. And again, on the stocks channel, we do 3 different stocks every week. So if you have a look in the description for this video, you'll see the links to the stock. Someone's already spamming the chat with Bitcoin. People like. Let me just sort that out. Hold on a second. There we go. Okay, so that's all that stuff done. So let's get into it. Today we are going to start with something we haven't started with before. Get ready, natural gas. What a couple of weeks it's been for natural gas. We don't normally look at this. I think natural gas is a bit of an odd market, I must admit. I mean, I've only been trading natural gas for probably a couple of years. Since we started covering it on the channel, it's not as popular as oil, but it's had some incredible moves. And at the moment, today, the price of natural gas is hitting its best levels since, got to wind this all the way back, got to go back 7 years, June 2014. It is something of I think, a nutcase market now and again. And you can see this back here, September 2018, went from about 2.8, touched 5 nearly in November, and then went crashing back again by January 2019. So it's a real volatile market, but it's been a great trend in natural gas. I did a video on natural gas earlier this week, and there are supply constraints at the moment. There was a bit of an effect from Hurricane Ida, but you can see the market, look at this trend, fantastic trend, came back to the trend mid-August at 3.8, and we're trading at 5 now. So what's that, 30% move in about 2 or 3 weeks on the price of natural gas. I've been long natural gas. We've been long in this account as well. So I think it's one of the biggest winners at the moment. So it's up about £1,036 at the moment for a trade put on 27th of July for 250 risks. That's worked out well. It's made 4 times the risk on that trade so far. And an incredible move. But when it reverses, it can reverse really sharply. But I think it's a really interesting market to watch going into next week to see how it performs. You know, for me, if I didn't have a trade on at the moment, I'd be tempted to sit on my hands and see if we get a bit of a pullback. But loads of support from 380 through to 420. Let's see what happens. But some fascinating moves on natural gas. It's interesting. Look at this. This really does bear out that people cannot go with trends, or some people can't. Look at the market sentiment breakdown here on the right-hand side. So, for clients with us who have a trade open on natural gas, 46% are short. Ouch. I mean, that has got to be painful, unless you've shorted at the high today, which is unlikely. But I think there's a great lesson there about the importance of going with trends. I think so. An important lesson about being able to trade with the trends. A market can always go much more extreme in both directions than you think it can. So, a great move over the last 2 or 3 weeks, continuing that trend since April. Let's see what happens next week. I mean, clearly, it's quite overextended at the moment. Good luck with that, Henry. It's quite overextended at the moment, but it was also quite overextended back at the end of August, and it's moved 10-15% higher again. Let's see what happens next week. But I thought it'd be interesting to start off with natural gas. It's been a great market for me the last few weeks or so. So let's see what happens. While we're on natural gas, let's take a look at oil. I think we've got a couple of trades on oil at the moment, or we did have. There was a long on Brent, there you go, a long on Brent oil that's up about 300 quid. And the more recent trade is a short on crude, which is down about 60 quid at the moment. It's been a bit subdued, the oil price, I think. And I think like I said last week, there are arguments for going either way almost at the moment. You can see, this is a daily chart we're looking at. You can see it's been pretty flat since the 27th of August, sort of flip-flopping from 67 to above 70 briefly. And I still think it's a difficult market to call here at the moment. If we went back on oil to the lows in April last year, and that trend did a great job until the beginning of August. We started falling out of the trend and pushed lower again into the 20th of August. And the last video we did on oil was the one I went short on. And I just wondered if this move up was just a bit of a dead cat bounce and the market would roll over. At the moment, we've had nothing really either way. But I think it is interesting up here, where we've fallen out of the uptrend. So is this a new downtrend for me? Let's see. If I didn't have a trade on through at the moment, I'd still be tempted to be short up here. And the closest I'd want my stop would be the other side of that September the 2nd high at $70.40. But let's see what happens. I think if it breaks 71, then perhaps this new trend is not a downtrend at all, and we're just going to have a bit of sideways trading. But I thought it's interesting. I mean, it's not changed much over the last week, clearly. So let's see what happens. But for me, so I'm long Brent at the moment, and I've moved the stop up to lock some profit in. And I'm short the other one, WTI, West Texas, and both of them have not done. There's Brent. Both of them have not done very much at all in the last week. So a little bit boring, those two. What are we going to talk about now? Stock market indices. Let's have a look at stock indices. Start off with my favourite, the S&P 500. Bit of volatility this week, the S&P, but at the risk of repeating myself for, I don't know, probably the 100th time, the trend is still just about up. I think I need to adjust that trend line actually, because it has pushed out to new highs since then. So there we go. The trend on the S&P 500 is still up. We have seen just about, I think, fresh all-time highs this month, just about. So the market traded to 4551.7 and 4545 was the previous all-time high from August. So for me, same old, same old. Whenever it gets knocked back, the weakness the weakness is a buying opportunity, or has been a buying opportunity. So for me at the moment, there's nothing to say this time is any different. Maybe that's the trade we do. We normally try and do a few trades in these things. Let's do a trade on the S&P. So we've seen the market sell off, what's that, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. This is today. So I'm going to bank on that trend for the S&P continuing. And for me, you know, from a longer term or a medium term point of view, I'd only start to change my tune if we took out the lows from August. You know, and I think that would be the absolute first point. I'd think, well, maybe this trend is in trouble. But for now, you know, we see it get knocked back for a few days and bang, off it goes again. You take a look on the hourlies. That's what it looks like on the hourly. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to be a buyer. I'm going to buy the S&P wherever it's trading now. Put a stop loss underneath the 26th of August low. So I'm going to go 44. Where shall I go? 44.60 on the S&P. Let's do the trade. So put a stop in at 44.60. And we normally risk £100 on these trades. So let's on the live stream trades. So the market's 45.14 to buy. Stop in at 44.60 down here. So giving it a bit of room. Let's go. And £102 risk. Buy. Done. Okay. Let's see how that turns out. So I think, you know, for me, that trend is still up on the S&P. Interesting market to watch next week after the sell-off we've seen over the last few days. Let's see what happens. Let's take a look at the Nasdaq. We do have a trade running on the Nasdaq in here somewhere as well. Hold on. From the 8th of July. So the 8th of July trade on the Nasdaq bought at just below 14,600. The market's 15,660 at the moment. So it's up 1,000. There's a really good lesson here, I think, for those of you who are open to it, that actually the important thing in trading is not about being right all the time, because you won't be right all the time. The important thing in trading is when you're right, to run your profits for as long as possible. Look at the open profit on this account, £4,200. Nasdaq trade up 1,000, natural gas up 1,000. So half the profits, the open profit, are from two trades, and there's a whole bunch of trades in there. So the really important thing when you're right in a position is to try and run that position for as long as possible, for as long as that trend continues. The reason why most traders lose, one of the big reasons most traders lose, is that their profits are smaller than their losses, and that is never going to be a sustainable approach to trading. So there you go. That's a little lesson. It's Friday's trading lesson. Right, Nasdaq. So Nasdaq, same old on the Nasdaq. So we go back to the March lows. Again, we've seen a sell-off the last few days in the Nasdaq. It hasn't been the same size as the S&P. Still strong, isn't it? What can you do? You know, so for me, again, I'd use the August lows as the reference point. If the Nasdaq dropped below 14.7, I might change my tune about the trend for the Nasdaq. But for now, at least, when the market gets knocked back, it bounces back again. You know, these trends are still strong in these markets. The Ftse, the UK market, again, will have been knocked back. Oh, what's it not happy about? Hold on a second. Actually, there's an interesting trade on the Ftse, because it's been knocked back. The Ftse always over-exaggerates it. I think the Ftse is not a good index to trade. And I think it's one of the ones, if you're based in the UK, like I am, it's probably one of the markets when you first start trading, you do gravitate to, because it's your home market. But I think it's just a bit of a weird one, the Ftse, because so many of its constituents derive their profits, turnover, whatever, from overseas. So that what's happening with the pound has an impact on the Ftse, And it's never, I don't think it's a smoother market to trade, which may be a bit subjective, but a bit of an odd one. What's interesting is the Ftse has been knocked back to the lows from mid-August. So the lows from mid-August was 69.90 or thereabouts. It traded down yesterday to 69.91. So it's interesting. So again, for me, the Ftse, if it went much below, let's say on the Ftse, the mid-July lows, it has massively underperformed, well, not massively, but it has underperformed on the way up compared to US markets. But that trend is still broadly still up. Let's take a look at the DAX, the German market. There you go, DAX. The DAX has fallen out of its trend. The DAX has almost gone its own way a bit over the last couple of months. It has fallen out of the trend, but I would still give it another chance and be a buyer, because if US stock markets go up, we'd expect to see the DAX go up. Let's see what happens. But it's interesting that one has fallen below. For me, the big support on the DAX would be the July the 19th lows at 15,000 and something. So, and the interesting market, I think, we saw it last week. Someone mentioned last week it had a move on political reasons. The Nikkei, the Japanese index, finally breaks out of that correction it had been in since Feb of last year. This year, sorry, what am I talking about? So 6 months we've been in that correction, and bang, look at that, gone like a rocket over the last month or so. So it's an interesting change in trend we've seen for the Nikkei. I think I mentioned in my own trading account, one of the oldest trades I have is on the Nikkei. So I do tend to run my own trades, pretty similar to the trades in this account. Try and run them for a couple of months if the market's going the right way, have stop losses and all of that. But I've had a Nikkei trade running, I think since December or January, and it was in profit for a bit, and then it's just been flip-flopping around in profit and loss. And I think it's interesting the break this week. So I wonder what's going to... the Nikkei has gone from... it is an interesting move, this. We've gone from August 20th lows, which were pretty much the lows for the year. So the Nikkei has gone from making new lows for the year in August to being almost close to setting new highs for the year in September. I think that's going to be an interesting market to watch next week. For me, the level to watch next week is going to be 30,700. So those are pretty much the highs for the year so far. Let's see what happens with the Nikkei next week. I suppose if you really wanted to go short the Nikkei, it's a good level up here. And for me, I'd have my stop above that high from Feb, but I wouldn't go short. So, but who knows? What do I know? Let's see what happens. But an interesting market to watch next week, the Nikkei. So US stocks, trend still strong. We did that trade on the S&P, didn't we? Where is it? Oh, we're losing money. Can't believe it. So we're losing money on the S&P trade so far. We'll see how that works out for the rest of the day. So we looked at oil and natural gas, we looked at the stock market, and so let's take a look at gold and silver. For me, these are still boring markets. But, look at gold. Now, if we take gold back for the year to date, near enough, the price of gold is trading where it was in November, end of November last year. So we've got lots of volatility, but no real trend. I think I did say, maybe this time last week, that if we wanted to go short gold, maybe it was an interesting level. It is interesting that it's backed off again, the price of gold, from those highs. Those highs in July and into August, around 1830, 1835. You can't crack it again. I suppose if you really wanted to do a trade on gold, the aggressive trade would be to be a buyer. So, we've seen on the way up, 1775 to 1780 has been good support. 1780 has emerged as good support over the last couple of days or so again. So maybe we get another push up next week to have a look at 1830 on gold. But I think if you look at, for me, I'm looking to try and identify half decent trends, and then there isn't one in gold. In a nutshell, so it'd be a buyer if it got knocked back below 1700. Be a seller if it got pushed up to 1900. It's just a little bit boring. I must admit, for my older, I know I always say that silver is a boring market. I was thinking that actually for my own account today, or maybe early next week, I might be tempted to be a buyer of silver, even though it is the dullest market for me anyway, over the last 12 months. Here we go in silver. Silver, some of the silver videos we do get some strange comments. I think there's a real hardcore, somewhat conspiracy theory biased traders in silver. People convinced the market is rigged. There was that case with JP Morgan a few years ago now. But I always think, if you think a market is rigged, why trade it? Why not trade something else? But anyway, I think silver pretty sideways. That's the last 12 months on silver. Look at it, just sideways. Clearly opportunities at the extremes if you manage to nail the turning points, but just directionless for a year, price of silver. But I think this little recovery we've got chugging on since the August lows, let's take a look at that. The reason I was maybe tempted to go against my better judgment and be a buyer of silver is the fact that we are making a recovery off that spike low. That recovery is still continuing. We had new highs for the recovery a week ago. The market's pulled back a bit, blah, blah, blah. We've got a lot of support, loads of support from 23.30 to 23.80. So maybe it's an interesting short-term bounce for next week to see if it gets to $25. But the medium-term view is still the same. For me, it's just a bit of a directionless market. So that's all that done. I did do a trade today on my own account on the euro. So again, for my own stuff, I do more same sort of time frame as this, looking at weeks, maybe months. I think the euro is interesting. Euro against the dollar. So we had it's been a bit boring. I say that silver and gold is boring. Euro against the dollar has been boring. If we go back to September last year, pretty sideways again, fairly big range from 116 to 123, so a 750 point range, something like that. I just wonder if this slide we've been in for the euro since May is finally looking like it's coming to an end. I don't know, but we had a lot of support end of last year, 116 to 117 for the euro. We dipped down in August and turned around a bit sharp. So I just wondered if the correction is over and we're going to build a bit of a recovery. If we got back to 122.50, that'd be great by the end of the year. We'll see what happens. But I think it's an interesting one to watch going into next week. But clearly a bit of a mishmash of a trend recently. There's the hourly chart. Let's see what happens. Short-term support, 117.80 through to 118. Let's see what happens next week. And it's similar with the pounds, actually. And maybe with that UK unemployment data and inflation data, be a bit of excitement one way or the other for the pound next week. So again, what was interesting for me in the pound, pretty sideways market again this year, but the Feb low was 135.60, ran up to 142.50, and we've seen this level hold. July holds, August comes close. It's a bit stuck in the middle of the range for the last couple of months, a little bit boring maybe, but perhaps an interesting one to watch next week with this data coming out for this next week. Let's take a look at the dollar index while we're on FX. I think the dollar index, I often say it, great market to watch. So it's the dollar against a basket of other currencies. And like I say, for me this year, I have been wondering, is this the year of the great dollar comeback? We have seen it form a base in January and May out of 89.20. It did push very briefly to highs for the year in late August. I'd still be tempted to be a buyer on weakness for the dollar index, but again, a little bit directionless perhaps over the next month or so. Kiwi, our New Zealand dollar, US dollar, looks like it's starting a new trend. I went short the New Zealand dollar this week, and I was in profit straight away, and it's come back again. So let's take a look at it. I just saw that come up in the chat, so I thought, let's take a look at it. It had been a great market on the way up, New Zealand dollar, US dollar. So we had this great trend on the way up and traded it a bit on the way up this year. And I don't know, at the moment, it's a tricky one to call. So my take at the moment, the reason I'm short is wondering whether it's in a downtrend. So I went short here on that day there, whatever that was, 6th of September. And it did fall off the next couple of days. And it's had a real strong move today, so I've given my profit back today. But I think it's an interesting one to watch next week, New Zealand dollar, to see if those highs from the 3rd of September at 71.70 hold. Let's see. Let's see what happens. So, yeah, a bit of a mixed picture on FX at the moment. Let's take a look at the cryptocurrencies, of course. How could I forget? Bit of a smash down in the cryptos this week. We do have a couple of trades running. Let's have a look at those. Oh, actually, I think they've been closed. I think the Bitcoin trade was closed. I did have in this account some trades running, but they got closed out this week. Let me show you. So which ones were they? Trade closed. So Bitcoin closed on the 7th, so that was 3 days ago, for £200, and the Ethereum trades closed for about £600 profit in total for both of those. Let's take a look at them, because I would still be leaning to being a buyer on these two, but let's see what happens. I mean, that's a massive sell-off in Bitcoin. What did it do? It touched nearly 53 on Tuesday, and then traded down to 43. So volatility again. I mean, I would still be tempted to be a buyer. I think it's interesting. It spiked down to 42.5, 42.8, whatever it was, which was pretty near the top of the old range. So for me, if I really had to do a trade on Bitcoin now, if I was a buyer now, I'd put a stop. The closest I'd have my stop, the other side of 42.5, I think, would be the closest I'd have my stop. So it's interesting. Let's take a look on the hourly chart. Maybe it's a bit clearer on the hourly chart. Look at that move. Boom. I think somebody famously last week in the chat said never go short crypto. You know, you should be open to trading in both directions. I must admit I wouldn't have been going short because the trend is up. But lots of support in this 42 to 44 area for Bitcoin. Let's see what happens next week. And then Ethereum, let's take a look at Ethereum on the daily charts. There we go. So Ethereum, what did Ethereum do? So Ethereum went from 3,965 to 3,000. Big move again, 30% move in a day. Crazy markets. I think they are completely the wrong markets for new traders, but that's just my opinion. But again, for me in Ethereum, you know, it got knocked back a lot, but I think it's interesting where the old support is. Where is it? Sort of running from 3,029 to about 3.2. It's interesting, it's selling off now. I'd watch that later on today, and of course it trades over the weekend. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw some buying come in, but I'm not backing it with my own money, so I'd take that with a pinch of salt. Let's see what happens. But interesting markets to watch next week, the crazy cryptos. And that's it. Okay, we'll have a look at some of the questions. I can just see a question that's coming in. Can you remind me why you can't open new crypto positions in the UK? You can't. There was a ruling from the regulator, the Financial Conduct Authority, in January of this year that banned the leveraged trading of cryptocurrencies for UK-based traders. So that's why you can't. So it's a regulation thing in the UK. I think, as far as I know, if you're in continental Europe, you still can. And the reason we cover it, of course, is because we don't just have clients in the UK, but for UK-based clients, you can't spread bet or do leverage trades on crypto, and that came from the regulator. There you go. Okay, so we've done, our usual mix of markets, haven't we? Let's take a look at some of the questions coming in. Just a quick reminder, it's Capital.com trading platform to go to our website to open up a trading account. David Jones Trading to find out more about me and the training course I run. Any questions after this, david.jones@capital.com, and on Twitter @JonesTheMarkets. And of course, you can follow us on Capital.com. Follow Capital.com on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Right, let's jump into the questions. Hold on a sec. Copper was one of the first ones coming. Interesting market, copper. I think somebody said last week in the comments after to have a drinking game. Every time I say interesting, to have a drink, and I watched a bit of the playback, and I do say it a lot. I think interesting is where I think a market is actually, there could be a trade there without saying, oh, there could be a trade here. If I don't say it's interesting, it probably means that I think it's a really boring market. But copper is definitely an interesting market. I do have an open position on copper in my own account, and I think there are a couple of copper trades in here as well. There we go. So the copper trade from the 26th of April, that is an old trade, and the 20th of August, which I'm guessing was a live stream because we placed it 4 minutes to 3. So that one's doing well. For me, that trend in copper off the lows, the March lows in 2020, it broke through the trend. But on the first break, I'm always willing to give it another chance. So for me, that trend is still just about up in copper. And like someone said, big move today. So for me, I still think we've still got major higher highs and major higher lows in copper. If it turned and broke below that mid-August low at 396, I would change my mind on the trend. But for me, I'd still be inclined to be a buyer of dips in copper. So for me, the next target would be a run to 460. Let's see what happens. And if we can break through there, perhaps we have a look at these highs, not all-time highs. I think they're 10-year plus highs in copper. But interesting one to see what happens. Interesting, there you go. Take a drink. Still positive for me, copper, despite the quick 4-day move below that trend line. So let's see. We did gold and oil. What else have we got? Let's have a quick look. Camber Energy. Right, we've never heard of those. Don't know if we cover them. See what happens. See what it looks like. Camber Energy, there you go. Right, looks a little bit crazy to me. So not interesting, crazy. Where is it listed? US dollar listing. It looks, I'm guessing, is it quite a small company? Maybe. I often say I'm always a bit put off some of these companies that swing around like this. For me, that is nuts, isn't it? It looks like natural gas, actually. The thing goes from $3 in Feb to 35 cents in August. So, and then back up to $1.40. Is it a bit of a meme stock, maybe? I don't know. So for me, the trend is up, but what can you do? With stocks like this, I don't trade stocks like this because the volatility is nuts for me. If I was a buyer now, where would you put your stop loss? I've got absolutely no idea. Even if I put my stop loss below yesterday's low, there's still 40 cents away from where we are now. It's a 30% stop loss. So if you're in it, great. But for me, it's not one I could make too much sense of. Sorry, because it's just the swings are crazy. I think for me, I always say these ones are always casino stocks, and if you're in it and you make money, good luck to you. If you only have a small amount to start trading, which markets would you suggest to start trading? Well, I don't think it makes that much difference with us, because with us you can trade tiny. So, for example, if I was going to trade the Dow Jones, for example, right? Let's say I want to do a trade in the Dow Jones, and I want to be a buyer. Oh, these US stock markets are a bit weak today. I want to be a buyer of the Dow now. Let's say I want to be a buyer of the Dow at 34,870 with a stop loss the other side of, let's pick yesterday's low. Is that yesterday's low? The other side of 34,790. Let's say I want to trade the Dow with a 200-point stop loss because it is a volatile market. So I'm going to buy it. I don't know what the smallest you can trade with us is. If I put a stop loss at 34,650, so I can trade at a level where I'm only risking £1.50 on that trade. So I think if you've got a small amount of money, you need to be with a broker where you can trade small. I would be inclined to avoid the crazy volatile markets and stick to the more mainstream markets. Because don't forget, most people lose money trading. And I think people get sucked into markets that are hot. They don't practice sensible risk management. And they lose a lot of money very quickly. Like Ethereum is a great example. This week, where it moved 30% in a day. So I think it's great when these markets are going in your favor, but a 30% move in a day is nuts. So I would say perhaps stick to the more mainstream markets until you get a bit more experience in trading. My son is a great example. My son is 20 years old, and him and his mates all trade cryptos. And I think mainly it's great when it's going up, but it's not so great when it's moving against you and you're taking a massive loss and you don't understand risk management. So I would say if you've got a small account, trade with a broker who lets you trade small. but trade the more mainstream markets would be my recommendation. But then what do I know? Okay, can we have a look at aluminium? Yes. I never look at this market, and I really should, because I've got a feeling it's been really strong again lately, hasn't it? Yes, it has. There we go. Wow, look at that. That is a great market. Should really pay more attention to that, to be honest. So I think it's a market we only started covering this year. I'm not sure whether this is multi-year highs or not, but you can't argue with the trend in aluminium, can you? Or I can anyway at the moment. There were some great buying opportunities if I'd have been paying attention in August. The price has moved 20% since August, almost, price of aluminium. So for me, the trend is up. The only question is, would I be a buyer now? And I'd rather wait for a pullback now, a bit like natural gas. If I wasn't in it already, I'd rather wait for a pullback. But for me, undeniable trend. Even if it came crashing back down 10, 15% from here, for me that trend is still up. I haven't got any more data to go on, so we can't pick out any longer term levels. But for me, it would take a sell-off through 2,500 to suggest that trend was over. But a great trend. I'm going to make a note and add it to my watch list of stuff to watch, because I don't watch it, and I really should, because that is, for me, it's the perfect market, a market that trends really well. Okay, we looked at WT oil, WT. There's a few people short natural gas in here. Well, I hope you're practicing sensible risk management, going short natural gas. Good luck with it anyway. Let's see what happens next week with natural gas. Did you qualify as a technical analyst through the STA? Yes, I did the Society of Technical Analysts exam a long time ago, back in 1995. Yeah, that's right. And now I actually teach one of their courses. So I did, the STA is the official qualification, and I am a tutor on one of the STA diploma courses now. Euro Swiss, someone said. Euro Swiss? Euro Swiss, a bit of a messy one, isn't it? But it's a little bit like, what do we look at? New Zealand dollar, US dollar, I think. Or even actually the price of oil, which is completely unrelated. But I would argue that trend is down in Euro Swiss, off the March highs. So for me, I'd go short. And the closest I'd have my stop would be above 109, the highs from the other day, September the 8th. I think if it starts breaking 109, maybe even 109.50, it doesn't look like the trend is down anymore. So let's see what happens. But for me, it looks like a downtrend to me. And my target would be, first target would be for a run back to those mid-August lows at 107. Let's see. Let's see how it turns out. Have you noticed a bit of a detachment recently between gold and silver movement? No, because I don't watch them that often. But I think there has been a bit. I mean, silver seems to overreact to the downsides, but they're not markets I watch that closely for my own stuff. We do regular videos on the channel because I know people like them, but most of them I have not paid that much attention to them myself. Can we have a look at a long-term chart on Nike? Is it Nike, NKE? Yes. I think we've looked at this before, haven't we? And I think we looked at this. I remember looking at this when it had that big move. It was that big move on earnings, and I remember saying at the time, I'm never, for me, when they have a big move, it's always difficult to do the trade because it went from, again, pretty much the lows of the year to fresh highs for the year. So for me, I'd have to be a buyer because the trend is up. The only question, as usual, is where would the stop go? So for me, if I was a buyer today at 165-ish, the closest I'd have my stop, probably the other side of 156. So the trend is up. It's just whether you think we're still in this correction, and I don't know. But for me, the trend is up. So I'd be looking to be a buyer on Nike. Please share any crazy stock market crash stories if you can. I think the only sort of real stock market crash that I've traded through, I suppose, is 2008, the financial crash in 2008. And there are some horrible stories of people who lost an awful lot of money. Because again, when markets are going up, it's great and you're making money and it's really easy. But lots of people trade without any risk management. So when markets reverse sharply, as with the dot-com bubble bursting, I don't know if we have the data, for the bubble bursting. I was around for that as well, actually, in early 2000. We've got the data, we haven't got the data. But yeah, and I just think you have to, because markets don't very rarely go down 50% in a blink unless it's a cryptocurrency. So I think if you have, like with the, like the open position, the Nasdaq is a good example. Running this profit on the Nasdaq, and actually the stop, I should move the stop. So I should definitely, let me move that stop now. So the stop is miles away on the Nasdaq at the moment. So let's move the stop up to 15,000 at least. As long as you're doing sensible stuff like trailing up your stops, if you're running big open positions, when a correction comes, clearly you're going to give back profit, but hopefully you don't give it all back. Copper, we looked at copper. Dollar, South African rand. Let's have a look at that. US dollar, ZAR. Interesting market. So let's just take that out. Now you see me, I would have been, so we had a big downtrend in the dollar against the rand. Breaks out the downtrend, so I wouldn't believe it, but I would definitely be believing it here. So I would now, that's an interesting market to watch next week. There's 2 drinks. Because I would be looking to be a buyer. Not yet though. I think it's interesting, we've had a breakout of that trend and it's sold off. This is dollar weakness we're seeing here. I wonder if we'll see it snap back next week or over the next couple of weeks. That is probably the most interesting FX market we've looked at today for me. So I will be watching 14 next week on dollar rand to see if we see a bit of strength come back in. Because for me, it looks like that downtrend, which started in April last year after we saw the big run up in the dollar as the coronavirus spread, as people look for a safe haven. Yeah, definitely one to watch next week, dollar rand. Is there a Hust cycle indicator? I've got no idea what a Hust cycle is. Copper, yeah, we did copper, didn't we? Copper. Everyone knows Bill Gates and Cheryl Cole control the price of silver. Inflation, blah, blah, okay. Camber Energy, a lot of interest in Camber Energy. Corn and soybeans. Let's have a look at those. I do have a trade on soybeans at the moment. It's not doing very well. I don't think we list it yet, soybeans. No, we don't. So I'm just going to jump over onto something else. So this is just a third-party charting software. So I've got a trade on soybeans at the moment. Great run-up from last year. Bit of a funny year this year. And I think if it weakens much below where we are now, soybeans, I'll be out of the trade. But I was banking on that level holding. So I think if soybeans starts moving down to new lows for the year, it looks really bearish. But I mean, some massive volatility on soybeans this year. So corn, let's have a look on corn. Oh, we don't cover corn either. Oh, that's unfortunate. I don't think I've got it on the other platform either. Let's have a quick look. No, so I can't look at that. Sorry about that. Does your course include Elliott theory? No, because I think it's utter rubbish, Elliott wave. Your opinion may differ, but utter cobblers is my opinion on Elliott wave. But if someone's making a lot of money during doing Elliott waves, good luck to them. Dollar Swiss franc. Let's take a look at that. Dollar Swiss, USD chuff. It's a bit boring, isn't it? It's a little bit boring, that one. What did you say? What did you say about it? Forming an ascending triangle. Could be a triangle. I'm not a big fan of patterns, personally. But again, it doesn't mean it's wrong. There are hundreds of different profitable trading strategies out there. But so we've definitely got a bit of triangle action going on there. But for me, it's just a bit of a difficult one to call, isn't it? Dollar Swiss at the moment. I would say, for me, that trend is sort of up, isn't it, on the lows. Looking something like that. So I'd probably be more inclined to be a buyer rather than a seller. If we've got a bit of weakness next week, perhaps down to 91, it will qualify for the interesting label. SKLZ. What's SKLZ? Let's have a look, see if we cover it. Sklz, is that the one? Sklz Inc. Mobile games platform, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now, to me, that does not look interesting. I mean, that looks like a horrible stock to have been in. They may be a great company, don't get me wrong. But I'm guessing, did they only come to the market in February? So they started trading about $40. And here we are at 11. So another great lesson in risk management. So for me, this is another one where I'd look at it and then I'd go and look at something else personally because it doesn't fit my own personal approach. I suppose if you really had to buy it today at $11, I'd have a stop the other side of 10. It's interesting that 10 ended up being support, but for me, it's just, it's a bit of a nightmare, isn't it, at the moment? Or it has been a bit of a nightmare. Maybe it won't carry on being a nightmare, but for me, it's not one that'd be of interest to me, but if I had to buy it, I'd put a stop loss under 10. Can we look at Hang Seng? Yeah, let's have a look at that. We don't look at that one, do we normally? Hang Seng 50. Let's take a look. I wonder, I did, because of all the clampdown that we're seeing in China, I did a video on, I can't even remember who it was. Chinese stock that recently came to the market. Can't remember. We did one on that on the stocks channel this week and about the whole clampdown on them. Is it Speng? I can't remember. But clearly, Chinese stock, a lot of uncertainty around China and Hong Kong at the moment, and we're seeing it reflected in the stocks. I suppose if you were brave at the moment, or you thought actually the worst has been factored into the price, you could be a buyer, 26,100. The closest I'd want my stop would be the other side of those August lows, 24.6. I'd probably rather sit it out for a bit and see if we get a bit more direction on the Hang Seng. But you could take the view from a price action point of view that maybe the worst is over. It had a spike down in August 20th below those late July lows, and we didn't get any follow through. So maybe we have seen the worst. So I'd probably be leaning to be a buyer rather than a seller at the Hang Seng, but maybe sitting it out is maybe the better one. FCEL, let's have a look at those. Is that clean energy? FCEL. Fuel cell energy. Oh, again, horrible looking chart, isn't it? Touched, what did they touch? $29, and here we are at 6. So again, for me, not much interest, to be honest, for me at the moment. We're bumbling ahead of those mid-August lows at 558. If it broke 558, the risk for me is it sell off a bit harder. But for me as a trend follower, I'd like a nice clear trend rather than just a bumping around one at the moment. Ethereum. Oh, Coinbase. So yeah, Coinbase are being investigated. I don't know, there was an SEC thing this week, wasn't there, on Coinbase? I mean, Coinbase again, if you really had to buy it, and I don't know, maybe it will just go soaring away. You could argue, I would argue, it's built a base above $200 since its IPO. There's the IPO there. So again, if I really had to be a buyer, I'd put a stop loss the other side of $200. But again, it's a bit directionless, isn't it? It's a little bit directionless since that sort of crashed down to $200. Nvidia. Lovely trend. So this is what I like. Nice trend. Look at that. Go back a few years. Where are we going back to here? The 2020 lows. If we pick up on that, something like that. There you go. We've accelerated away from the trend, broken out to new highs in whenever it was. So for me, it's one of those ones where if I'm going to do something, I will be a buyer because the trend is up. Where would your stop loss go? Or where would my stop loss go? Probably the closest I'd have it, the other side of maybe the previous highs, the other side of 210, maybe on Nvidia. So the trend is up. The only question is when you have a strong move like this, is do you wait for a pullback? Do we dip back below 200? Or do you just pile in and buy? So I don't know, but a clear uptrend on that one. Have we looked at cotton recently? Cotton's doing really well, isn't it, I think? Cotton, let's have a look at cotton. Great trend. So I do have a position in cotton, a trading cotton. Look at that trend, going back to March last year. Is there a trade in cotton in this account as well? copper, cocoa. Oh, cocoa's doing well. No, not in cotton. But yeah, nice trend in cotton. It's had a little bit of a pause, it feels like, at the moment in cotton. So, but that trend is still up. So for me, it would take a weakness to at least 90 cents in cotton to suggest the trend was changing. It broke out through the Feb highs, and it's just having a little bit of a think about it, about where it goes next, the price of cotton. Sugar, let's do sugar while we're on cotton. I closed my sugar trade out yesterday, I think it was. But I do wonder. So I think that's an interesting market for fans of commodities. A trend in sugar going back to April last year. It's sold off quite a bit this month, but I think it's going to be interesting. Maybe let's come back to it next week and see what happens if we see a bit of strength coming in on sugar. So let's see. Crude oil, we looked at crude oil. Dollar Canada, I've got a trade on dollar Canada. I think I did it, I can't remember when I did it. Beginning, and if I look at the chart, I might be able to figure it out. Maybe the beginning of August, maybe. I think it's a bit of a messy one. I would still argue at the moment that on dollar, Canadian dollar, the trend is still up. And for me, I would change my mind if it lost sort of 124, that sort of area. And it's just been a little bit scrappy the last month. But I did wonder, the reason I did the trade for me, I did wonder if that trend, that big trend, is over and we're going to see some strength. And we have seen some strength, and it's all gone a bit scrappy the last month or so. But for now, for me, I'm still in the trade. Let's see what happens next week. But for me, 124 is perhaps the level to watch on the dollar against the Canadian dollar. Crude oil, we looked at crude oil, we looked at crypto, we looked at oil. So oil, if you once we finish this, the recording is available, and oil is covered in the first 20 minutes. Can we have a look at Tesla? Yes, we do have a trade on Tesla going back a long way, 18th of May. So bought Tesla at 580. The stock is currently 754, so that's up 500 quid. It's a good trade there. So let's have a look at Tesla, and that's the trend. Again, it's a trend trade. So when did we buy it? I can't remember when I said I bought it, back in May. That trend is still chugging away on Tesla. Nice little pull back to the trend line in August, back to 650. So the trend is still up. Maybe it'll start to struggle a bit next week in Tesla above 780. Did you see there was they put out a video, was it yesterday or today? They've set a new record around the Nürburgring with the, is it plaid or plied, whatever it is, version of the whatever car it is. So that's that. But a bit of an issue maybe around about 780. But that trend, the recovery trend is still up for Tesla. So for me, I'd still be a buyer of dips on Tesla. Perhaps it's a bit overheated in the short term. But let's see what happens. We looked at Bitcoin and Ethereum. Aussie dollar, US dollar. Let's take a look at that. Aussie dollar. I think it's a bit of a difficult one at the moment, Aussie dollar. I'd still be looking to go short on the Aussie dollar, US dollar. It's a bit, we've got big support from this time last year, pretty much, down at 0.7. Hit 71 in August. We've rallied back up, but a bit like the New Zealand dollar, I'd be tempted to think that the trend is still down on that one. So I'll be tempted to be a seller of the Aussie dollar, US dollar. But let's see what happens next week. And that's it, I think. That's no more questions. So I'm going to wrap things up there. I'm going to have an early finish today. So thanks for coming along. As usual, Capital.com to open an account with us. All the markets we've looked at today are on Capital.com. Download our app. DavidJonesTrading.com to find out more about me and the training course that I run, and the more about my own trading. David.Jones@Capital.com if you have any questions after today. At Jones the Markets is Twitter. Follow Capital.com on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. Don't forget, we've also got a stocks channel. The link is in the description of the video for today. And there's a video going up on Robinhood Markets today. Let's have a quick look at that. See what they're doing today. I mean, they've got, again, massive volatility, absolute nuts stock again. They only came to the market on the 29th of July, Robinhood Markets. disappointing IPO, and then went absolutely crazy up to $84, and here we are down at $41 at the moment. So there's a video going up on that this afternoon on our other channel. So make sure you're on that. And we'll do it all again this time next week. I think do it all again next Friday at 2:30. Interesting week next week. All that inflation stuff coming out. Could see some volatility next week. Let's see what happens. But good luck with your trading, and let's hope for lots of more interesting markets this time next week.